bit of British politics. It seems that not a day passes without another damning piece of news about UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. To discuss the latest addition to that list, I'm joined by I-24 News investigative reporter Eylon Aslan-Levy, who has all the details, and very honored to have in studio Marie-Sarah van der Ziel, President of the Board of Deputies of the British Jews, the main representative body of the British Jewish community. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Abby.
Let's begin with your exclusive report, Eylon, on Corbyn's visit to Israel and the West Bank in 2010 to meet Hamas officials.
Here is Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the British Labour Party, meeting politicians from Hamas during a visit to Israel and the West Bank that he failed to declare to authorities. The evidence, deleted from the internet, now revealed by I-24 News for the first time. November 2010, Jeremy Corbyn visited Israel and the West Bank with Middle East Monitor, or MEMO, an Islamist lobby group in the UK. But there's no record of Corbyn's visit in Parliament's Register of Interests. MPs at the time had to declare gifts over £660 or $840. Corbyn's colleague Andrew Slaughter reported flights and accommodation for the same trip costing £927, funded by Memo and Friends of Al-Aqsa, meaning Corbyn broke the rules. The Labour Party did not answer questions about the funding for the trip, but a spokesman said Jeremy has a long and principled record of solidarity with the Palestinian people and engaging with actors in the conflict to support peace and justice in the Middle East. That is the right thing to do. Returning home, Corbyn reported back for the communist paper The Morning Star, "It is time to bring those Israelis who committed crimes against humanity to account and to end the EU-Israel trade agreement while the occupation and settlement policy continues." He met Arab politicians from across the spectrum, members of the Israeli parliament, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. Here he is at the protest tent of 3 Hamas officials, a sit-in at the Red Cross compound in Jerusalem when Israel tried to expel them for membership of a terrorist organization. And here at the back, receiving a most warm welcome, according to the report, from 5 Hamas politicians in Ramallah. Corbyn visited the Arab-Israeli town of al-Fahim, Jerusalem, Beersheba, Jaffa, Ramallah and Hebron, not meeting a single Israeli Jew on the way. His trip funded by Memo, an Islamist lobby group denounced by the British Jewish community's anti-Semitism watchdog. Memo's work includes supposed anti-Zionism that is actually strikingly familiar to older forms of anti-Semitism, but with Jews removed and so-called Zionists used instead. And Corbyn did not declare the funding he received from Memo for the trip, an omission as he comes under increasing scrutiny over his undeclared visit to Tunisia in 2014, laying a wreath on the grave of the masterminds of the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre. This revelation raising more questions, not just about Corbyn's relationship with extremist groups, but his relationship with the truth. Eylon Aslan-Levy, I-24 News.
Along with many other people in
Eylon, amazing work. Bring us up to date on the latest on this story and how it's being covered in the United Kingdom.
So indeed, a number of outlets in the British press have picked up on this story, in particular because one member of Parliament, Andrew Percy, who is the vice chair of the all-party parliamentary group on anti-Semitism, has referred Corbyn to the authorities for investigation over the allegations that we raised in our report. Because more than just meeting Hamas officials, which, let's face it, is something that people are shocked by but not necessarily surprised, he did so accepting money from 2 Islamist groups and then did not declare it. And as we said in the report, we know the colleague he went with did declare it, and it was over the limit that he had to declare. So we have this member of Parliament referring him, saying he wants an investigation, also saying, drawing attention to the fact we said this report had been deleted from the internet, asking whether the Labour leader was part of what he calls an alleged cover-up, trying to hide the evidence.
And you have some more news about former Foreign Minister, Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, the current opposition leader, regarding Jeremy Corbyn?
Absolutely. Tonight on The Rundown, we're going to be running our report showing a Jeremy Corbyn article from 2010 in which he called former Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni a war criminal. That's in relation to her involvement in the 2008-2009 Gaza war. Many Palestinians demanding her arrest over that. In fact, she was forced at one point to cancel a trip to Britain because of an arrest warrant. This was from The Morning Morning Star. He calls any plans by the British government to curtail the opportunity to arrest war criminals, as with Tzipi Livni, would be seen as yet another confirmation of British duplicity in the treatment of Palestinian people. Jeremy Corbyn's office not responding to our questions about whether he still stands by that accusation and whether a Corbyn government would seek Livni's arrest on British soil.
Marie, what's your reaction to these reports?
Every day you think, surely it cannot get any worse, but every day it does. We're learning that he's spending more and more time with terrorists, with extremists. His credibility surely is blown, but the ratings at home, they're quite alarming. Despite his dramatic drop in personal opinion polls, Labour are still ahead if there was a general election tomorrow.
How do you explain that?
He's a popularist leader. I cannot explain why good people, seeing that this is a man who spends his time with extremists, with terrorists, with people that threaten the security of Britain, not just Jews, think that this is a man who can lead the government.
Look, perhaps, Amy, I'll sort of slip in with something that might be a little bit less diplomatic for Marie. There are really two reasons that Corbyn seems to be doing, I'd say, fairly well in the polls. First of all, there is a certain populist backlash against the policies that the Tory government have been selling the public for the last few years. He offers something that is really a rebellion against policies that most working people say isn't working to their benefit. But more importantly than that, the British government has really been doing an appalling job on Brexit. Right. It's been a year and a half since it triggered the leaving process. Still doesn't have a collective position on how it wants to leave the European Union. Frankly, any leader other than Jeremy Corbyn would be completely crushing the Conservatives in the polls.
It's true that there is a lot of problems to do with Brexit, but that doesn't explain the popularity among young voters with Jeremy Corbyn, because that is where he's getting it. It is a cult, and people are betrayers if they are not with him.
And tell us a bit about how the Jewish community today is feeling when you hear these news.
We're feeling nervous, we're feeling anxious. It's like Jeremy Corbyn has declared war on the Jews at home. We've never been in this situation. It's unprecedented. We are fighting this. We are insisting on the international definition of anti-Semitism being implemented in full with the examples. We want the show trial of Eylon Aslan-Levy stopped, and we want the numerous disciplinary actions that have been pending for years to be completed in a transparent way. But his hatred of Israel and Zionism runs so deep, he cannot separate that from anti-Semitism. We, as the Jewish community, are now spending our time fighting the leader of the opposition. This is unknown.
Do you predict that he will be Prime Minister? I mean, I know that this is just polling that we're seeing now. What's your gut feeling? Do you think that this man is going to be Prime Minister?
I obviously cannot tell people how to vote, but if there was a general election tomorrow, the polls are indicating that he could indeed be a Prime Minister. We're in unprecedented, troubling, difficult times for the Jewish community.
Did you expect, by the way, the Prime Minister herself, Theresa May, to be a bit more vocal on this? Correct me if I'm wrong, because she hasn't commented on any of this, the scandal, or
she has. There was a moment in Prime Minister's questions that she did lash out at Corbyn.
But is she kind of looking at this kind of sign of let these guys do their own damage to themselves?
The government has accepted the international definition of anti-Semitism, and the Tories have always shown themselves to be friends to the Jewish community. I think that she cannot control what is happening now. We've got to keep calling out every act of anti-Semitism. We are very united in the UK that we cannot give up on this fight. But his cavorting with terrorists, spending time with terrorists, thinking that they're honoured friends and brothers, this is incredible.
To Israeli-UK relations if he becomes Prime Minister?
It's quite clear that there probably aren't going to be any relations immediately. I should think this could be a threat to world security, because the relationship between UK and Israeli intelligence is probably quite deep. This is going to have major implications, not just for Jews.